So coming off of the previous chapter, we came to an end of Akotsu's fight with Ryu and Ura, where they actually both wound up living, which is nice. And they also wound up giving their points to Akotsu, which on first read says that he gained 200 points, which means he'd be able to add 2 new rules. But apparently this is like a mistake and he's only supposed to have 190 points or something. I don't know how Gege is going to go forward with this, but to be honest, he should just say, screw the rules, I'm the mangaka, and just make it so that he has 200 points so that, he can make 2 rules, because Akotsu initially talked about 2 rules needing to be made anyway. One that allows communication between players and one that allows movement in and out of the colonies. But, I guess we'll just see what happens once we come back to this storyline. But that brought us to the next fight that we're coming into the series, and that's Hikari's, because we see him randomly inside of this Ferris wheel with his opponent, whose name is Charles Bernard, and he's a French mangaka. And that brings us to the beginning of this chapter, where we're seeing Charles's weapon, which is called a G war staff, which is kind of like a play on the G pen that mangakas use to illustrate their mangas. And after quoting the creator of D. Gray Man, he attempts to attack Hikari, who easily blocks it at first. But then Charles is eventually able to nick Hikari's cheek and draw some blood from him. This is actually the condition that activates his curse technique, because after this he goes on to put a panel onto Hikari's chest. Then Hikari tries to kick him, but Charles easily evades it and winds up attacking Hikari again. And Hikari thinks to himself, the way he just moved, that was more than just a reflex. Then Charles explains that the panel that he put on his chest is a panel that is forward from the present. Like how the bottom left panel on a manga page draws the reader's attention. Because you know how you start at the top right and you read to the left going down, bottom left would be the future of the story. And going further, he says, I'm seeing your very near future, about 1 second in advance. And as the fight continues and G Warstaff fills with ink, I'll be able to see even further into the future. So yeah, this is Charles's curse technique, and I think it's pretty cool and very fitting of a mangaka, especially the way that Gege explains it here, like looking into the future of the story by, looking at the bottom of the page. Also guys, could you please subscribe to this channel? A lot of you consistently watch my Jujutsu Kaisen videos, but you don't subscribe. And if it's because I'm not good enough, I totally get that. But if you were interested and you just, didn't think to do it, could you please do it now? Thanks, guys. And you also might be thinking well, a second isn't that much. And in our own reality, it's really not. It really wouldn't mean much to a normal person. The only people that would really be able to take advantage of something like this are professional athletes or something. But in battle manga world, we know that a second is maybe more than just 1 second to these characters, especially Jujutsu sorcerers, who I'm sure surpass our reality-based athlete. And even in the Jujutsu Kaisen world, I'm sure this curse technique, even just the amount that Charles has been able to activate, would take care of a lot of sorcerers. Hikari, not the case, because we know coming into this that he is a beast. He's been hyped up by Gojo, kind of putting him into the same tier as Akotsu, and we're seeing that the hype is kind of justified here, because even with Charles being able to see 1 second into Hikari's future, he's still barely able to avoid his attacks because he's just that fast. And Charles himself says, if I hadn't activated G War Staff, I had been a goner. So despite this, at first, Charles is still able to counter against Hikari. And then Hikari's but if seeing into the future is all you've got, and then suddenly he disappears and dips behind Charles and hits him in the back. And then he says, you have to look to know, right? Then I'll attack from your blind spots and press you hard. And that's exactly what he does. He winds up in front of Charles, kicking him in the face from the ground, and Charles is barely able to block this. And then Charles says, what's with his cursed energy? It's rough and hurts like sandpaper. So this gives us more insight into Hikari's application of his own individual cursed energy. But Hikari's method of attack here makes sense because he can see 1 second to the future. As we saw earlier, he saw Hikari sprinting at him. So if Hikari is always out of his line of sight or in his blind spots, then he wouldn't be able to see Hikari's 1 second further movement because he wouldn't be able to see him at all. So to compensate for this, Charles decides to just attack his blind spots, just assuming that Hikari is going to be there. And he does this and almost hits Hikari, but Hikari's like, nice try, because he knew he was going to do that, and then he hits him in the back. And then going further, we still see Hikari like staying out of his line of sight, moving to his blind spots. I really like this sequence, and I'm sure the anime is going to adapt it really well. And he smashes Charles in the solar plexus and continues on his strategy of, coming behind him. But Charles is barely able to nick Hikari again, but on the forehead, but also drawing more blood into his G War Staff, which now allows him to see 2 seconds into the future, which gives him even more of an advantage than he originally had. And he says, I'll be waiting in my blind spot. So this might be able to completely stop what Hikari has been doing here. Maybe 1 additional second was all it possibly took, because the next thing that Hikari does is activate his domain expansion. And apparently it's called Idle Death Gamble. And then Charles just freezes up. And the narration says, due to the guaranteed hits effect, Hikari's domain and curse technique rules were revealed to Charles's brain. So this is a pretty hyped ending, of course. Did not expect to see Hikari's domain expansion. Like I said earlier about how Charles is able to see 2 seconds into the future now, that might be the breaking point for Hikari, where he's like, okay, I need to take care of this guy right now. Because if he were to get any more blood, then that's 3 seconds, 4 seconds, and then maybe not even Hikari's curse technique will really be applicable at that point. So he's just like, this guy could be a big threat. Let me just take him out right now. And this could also just be wrapping it up quickly from a narrative standpoint, because we just came off of a long extended fight with a Kotsu taking on 4 different people. So this next fight doesn't necessarily have to be as long. And the readers have been waiting to see Hikari's abilities. So maybe Gege is making up for that by not only showing us his curse technique, but also his domain expansion all in one, and giving us this quick jobber fight to Hikari. So this would just be a nice full introduction to Hikari. But as for what Hikari's domain expansion is, I have no idea. Maybe some of you do. Sure, it has something to do with gambling because it says idle death gamble. I mean, we're not even really fully sure what his curse technique is. I mean, maybe it has something to do with doors, because we saw doors just randomly manifest when he was going against Yuji. But knowing Gege, maybe it doesn't have anything to do with doors, and doors are just one ancillary aspect of it. But let me know what you think about all of this in the comments, guys. What do you think Hikari's domain expansion is going to be? Do you even think we'll get the reveal of it in the next chapter, or is it just going to continue to be ambiguous and Gege is just going to keep playing with us about all of this stuff? But let me know. Also, Jump is on break next week, so we're not going to be able to find out for another 2 weeks at least. But if you like the video, guys, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.